Well, hello everyone. Yes, it's the dislocated voice of Curtis. Woo! Happy Halloween. Oh, that's already gone by. Okay, it's been a while since we did a BlenderNest episode, but that's because everyone's been busy doing different things. You know, the activity, it comes and goes in phases. But this episode, I think we recorded on the 24th of October. So this is from the end of last month, and we jump straight into the conversation where we're talking about hate comments and responding to comments and just stuff like that. So I hope you've been doing well and enjoy.
You type in that one lowercase, one uppercase, one lowercase, one uppercase, one lowercase,
Oh,
one
yeah.
uppercase.
So it's like really sarcastic.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Love
Oh,
it.
this one.
The other thing I did, so the winky face is like the one that it's so effective. Like, try it once. Like, I mean, if you're brave enough to do it, right? Because there was someone that was being nice, but I could tell something was a bit off just by the way they said it. You know, when someone like they say something mean, but then they try and add like a little bit nice in the end, but they're trying to be sassy. So then I did the winky, and then they came back with like a whole other paragraph about, oh, like this just goes to show that you're not really a good person. Like you don't deserve all the time. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. But the other thing I like doing is the absurdism ones, because like someone put something about like disliking the video and that. So I reviewed their comment from like the perspective of a food critic. And like giving them like, you know, it was classic. It was good. It has a fantastic flavor profile. Texture's not too great. I think the cinnamon was a bit too strong of a choice. Overall, 9 out of 10. I look forward to seeing you in the next round. Like, you know, absurdism like that's pretty. I like that because like they just go, okay, that's a bit weird.
Okay.
Yeah, you posted one in Discord yesterday that was kind of funny.
Oh yeah, there's so many.
It was along the lines of that. It was.
Oh yeah. That was one where it's like, oh, you're not like. If only it was real software talking about Blender or something like that, and the sponsorship is laughable. Or like what? Yeah, like real software as opposed to like fake software. You know, this real software that's funded by like what, you know, Epic and Apple and like all the other people funding it now. Like that's that fake software. Yeah, fantastic.
Yep. I don't even know what the point of their like. Why did they comment?
Yeah.
What were they saying?
So
I don't even know what they're saying. Like that was just like, what are you?
Like, why are you watching this video? Like,
exactly.
There's got to be there's an end game surely to them interacting with you and increasing your engagement on YouTube and making the algorithm like you.
Yeah,
there's got to be a reason for them to do that.
It's Curtis's second account.
Oh yeah.
Like I'll go back and forth with trolls sometimes just because I know it's engagement.
Yeah. Well, I have said to people before, thanks for the engagement to finish sentences. I think that really pees them off, but like I don't think people have actually responded to that one before. So yeah, maybe that's effective, but I think that one annoys them.
You reply to the person saying like, oh hey, where have you been? Nice to have you back or something.
So that one who did like the laughable one, I was like, oh wow, it's been so long, I haven't seen you in ages, because I think I recognized him. I like doing that to like the real haters, because I don't think they're real. Like with those comments, you think, well, how can, like, because even a child would be more creative than that, or like or would word it in a way that's more like effective to be hateful. But that was so simple. It's like so simple-minded, so smooth-brained, if I can use that term. Like it obviously wouldn't get through. It's too laughable. Like, because it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I'm like, well, that can't be real, right? So I try and like give a bit of humor back to it. Like, oh wow, it's been so long. I missed you. Like, welcome back. So,
I wonder if there are hate bots that are actively spamming channels when they get beyond a certain threshold.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't know why, but I don't doubt it.
I mean, like someone would maybe for a laugh, you know, maybe just to piss some people off.
It was a university project, but I left the AI running on an Amazon server. Oops.
Exactly, like something like that, you know? Like it's like every time I see somebody acting like really crazy on the subway or on the bus, you know, anywhere, like out in public, I always look for somebody else with a clipboard or a video camera or something nearby, just because I'm like, there's no way this person's just that crazy. Yeah. But sometimes you know, you always look at like this is a psychology experiment where, you know, there's like a university group out here, but no, sometimes people are just nuts.
But that's like one of my existential fears, right? People probably like listening to this and be like, oh, this is an actual psychological problem. It's not. Like, you know, the little fear like you're the only person that exists and everyone else is fake, like and you can't be sure because you can't. It's like It's like a qualia aspect to it, like because you can't really. Someone can't explain to you that they're a real person because you're not experiencing their perspective, right? But so the thing is, when you're a content creator and you're putting stuff out, and all the responses you're getting are exactly the same, and you've heard every single one of them before. And like, even if it's like a hate comment, and you try and engage with them, and they're the same responses that you've heard before again, and everyone behaves in the same way, you're like, well, is it real? Because like I'm trying to like get you to say something different, like because I've heard all of this before, but you're not. You're just being the same boring, hateful person. Like, you know, give me something interesting to work with here, because right now I'm questioning reality. But
combine that with a career path that keeps you inside and isolated almost all of the time. And it's like, I wonder.
It really
That
is.
is true.
Wow.
So like, again, about like the kind of the people that write the hate comments that make you out to be like a genocidal maniac or something, like you're the worst person in existence, like just for making like a tutorial about like, I don't know, flowers or something. So they project that kind of hateful narrative of you right through the comment. So they must have this idea that you just spend all your time just like killing babies or like offending people that have disabilities or something, like in your day-to-day life. In reality, you just wake up, like a pet the dog, get breakfast, maybe make some notes for a video, make a piece of artwork, read the comments. Oh, I'm a genocidal maniac. Okay. And then like get on with your life. It's like those two things don't line up. So yeah.
I genuinely don't understand how, as you're saying, the thought process behind some of these hate comments, because they're completely left field or right field. We're equal opportunities on the field here. But it's just like, what? They know nothing about you in terms of a person. We're a personality when we're on camera.
Yeah.
Even if it is our true selves, we still skew ourselves to present. It's just one of those things.
It's such a strange escalation from I'm frustrated that I can't follow this, that I don't have like the knowledge to follow your tutorial, to being like you're like the devil incarnate. Like that's just such a strange leap to go from one to the other.
Yeah. And I'm sure like, well, the kind of people that listen to this are not those people, right? Because they're like the kind of the dedicated people that come along. So there might be some people listening like, oh, are there actually people like that? Like, you know, that make the escalation. And yes, would you believe there are some very, very weird people online.
Yeah.
We just
the bigger you get, the more you see it too.
Yeah. I mean, just so you know, this is just like 1% of the whole comment session. So
it's very, very small.
Yeah, very small.
Very, very small. But still, you'll only remember those ones more.
Yeah.
Because these are unique.
And they're confusing.
It's really like 1% of all the commenters that we get on our videos but they're the ones that stand out because you're like, what?
Yeah.
What?
And negativity, of course, always has a bigger impact because it's part of our survival mentality. But yeah, I see if you look at it, it's mainly great job. This really helped. And sometimes it's longer than that. It's an essay about how it's changed their life, and now they love Blender again, and they're it's changed them forever. Which is also a bit weird, but you know, if you've had that impact on someone's life, that's fantastic. But I don't understand they've watched a video and now you're hating babies.
Segue, what is your best comment? Like, what's the nicest thing you've ever been told? Do you remember?
There were like mental markers. There were mental markers in my head, like, okay, well, on the discussion ones there have been some really significant comments, but I can't remember what they are because I've read like thousands of comments, and like some of them like spike up as like, oh, these are nice ones, but I remember where they are. I kind of remember that I read them, but I don't know what they were, so I would need to go back and have a look.
I mean, the recent one I remember is like they said like my channel will hit 1,000,000 subscribers by next year. I was like, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I had like a really like shitty day that day too, so it really made me laugh and have a little teardrop.
Oh,
the right cheek.
That's nice.
The ones that come on that were basically like I was about to give up, and then I found your video, and now I'm able to actually, create stuff. And I got my first, paying gig with it, and put food on the table and fed my kids or something like that. I've gotten comments in that vein, and it's just like I can like almost die and be like, I did something good on
an impact.
it.
Yeah.
I made an impact.
Yeah, I was talking to Erin about this a little before. He's like, you have time, so you don't have to like worry about it. It's like, what if I die tomorrow and if I don't have any impact on this world? I really want to.
Yeah. That's the good thing about us. We do have effect on the world.
Yeah, I think at least like 1 or 2 people by watching my videos have found something that they didn't understand now more enjoyable or something.
I think as well, like with the techy kind of videos, like mine and Charan's especially, that are a bit more kind of mathematical.
Yeah.
There's you got a lot of a demographic who are like, I'm creative, but I'm not like artistic, and I'm technical, and they'll come and they'll be like, oh, so actually I can be like an artist, or I can make artist tools. And then I don't know, like it's so nice when you see someone being like, I had no idea that this existed, like that you can make art, like you can make maths make art. And then it's just like completely empowers them to go down that journey of being a creative rather than like going into academia or something like that maybe they weren't interested in. I just think that's really cool as well.
Like the math people are the technical directors, like they're and the tool builders, and not just like the pipeline TDs, which a lot of people would think, oh, that's kind of boring. I think it's kind of cool because you're making the whole company work. But then there's like the effects TDs and things, or people building tools to give to the artists.
Yeah, exactly.
With like lighting TDs, same thing.
Yeah.
So math goes so far.
That
it's through art and through using Blender and going back into Python from Blender and then doing shaders mainly that it kind of rekindled my curiosity with mathematics, and it's through that I've learned vector mathematics that I don't even think I covered properly at school. And until I touched those things, I was like, but I can see it. I can see it on the screen, and I can literally tweak some knobs and go, this is amazing. Now I understand what it actually does, not just on a bit of paper. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I can honestly say, like, you guys have changed my life. Like each one of you. And I can cite a specific example, like Charan, like when you put up that here's how I break down an algorithm. I couldn't even like pronounce the word algorithm. I mean, I spent like 20 years working with engineers. I still can't pronounce algorithm. And you're like, so here's how you break it down and put it into nodes. And I'm like, it clicked. Oh my God. And then I was just like, I mean, it was like an epiphany, and like, honestly, like there was something Erin, you just said in a video on fields, and I'm like, why would they go in this direction? This is like,
oh, that's why.
Like, Michael, with your, recently with your GLTF, the thing we were talking about, and I'm actually using for a client, and I'm like, oh, and actually I had taken your advice. I had actually gone in and used, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it like changed the course of like what I'm doing. So like I was able to actually go in and actually make this thing work. I can go back in Discord and figure out exactly what it was, but it escapes me right now because I haven't had coffee yet. Or Curtis, like you, I don't know. Like,
it's okay. You're not obliged to add a segment for me just because I'm here. It's fine.
There's like 11 things you do every week that I'm like, oh man, thank God he's here. So it's great.
Well, I will say, this kind of reminds me of like when doing the programming tutorials. One thing that I really one thing I really wanted to get across to people was that there's not just one way to think about something. Because like I can't do mental maths to save my life. I don't understand fractions, right? I can't read equations. I can't. It doesn't click. It doesn't do anything for me.
I was like that. Absolutely.
So it's like, okay, well, I think I'm a pretty good programmer. I don't have too much experience with Python, especially not when compared to C#. So it's okay. Well, how do you do the stuff then? But what I do is I literally think it out in instructional ways. Like, do you remember being like primary school, and there was like these exercises where teachers would be like, okay, write a recipe for how to make like jam on toast. But then they would like scrutinize it in extreme detail. Like, well, you didn't say to open the jar, so how can I get the jam? So you need to write everything out like sequentially.
Yeah.
That's how I do it.
And jelly sandwich. Yep.
Yeah. So when I want something to happen, I write out all the individual steps for it, and even like all the extra steps for like the conversions for data and whatever, and then I take that line by line, and then I put that in comments into the code, and then underneath each line I start writing the appropriate code for it, and then you just remove the comments afterwards. So it's like, well, you write the recipe in English, then you write the recipe in code, and then you just remove the English one. So that's how it happens.
You just gave me another epiphany.
Yeah.
So
I've said
maybe
that
I
to
can
students.
code now.
Yeah, so you don't just sit there writing code. That's not how it happens. Like, I'm writing it out like a recipe, and then I just think, okay, well, I know technically how to do that with Python. Let me look at my old project, because I think I did that in it. So you're just taking slices and putting them in where you want them, and then get rid of it. And it looks
I
like...
do that all the time.
Yeah.
So
You know when Neo's like, I know Kung Fu. That's how I feel right now. Like, somebody should have told me to code like this.
Well, that's exactly it. So, like, I think there's a lot of people that are like, oh yes, the mathematical way. I mean, you must memorize all of the things. No, that's not functional.
No, I mean,
you should learn how you learn and how you I guess interpret things. For me to understand mental maths, I should probably invent my own system for like drawing maths out, and it would probably be like a different visual way of doing it, and there probably exists stuff for that already, but the way that we've learnt it like traditionally in our schools is not good for me. So I think I would probably need to pick up a different way of doing it.
Start from primary again.
Because like the UK is supposed to have every other country aside from the United States is supposed to have a way better. Like, it's like every time I meet people from outside the United States, they always know math way better than I do. And I'm like, the United States is just dumb with this or something. Like, we're not teaching it right.
So you know.
They've moved to something called Common Core now that is a little bit better, I think. People love it or hate it. I'm indifferent to it. But it's not the way we learned math, I'll tell you that.
I'll let Charan say something, but I do want to tell you something about the way I count as well, which probably goes into it. But Charan, what did you want to say?
I just want to say, like, the way I learned math was so weird. Like, I mean, when I say that, people say that's horrible. They literally made me like memorize all the formulas, which is fine. But then I would never know. Like, they won't explain me why I should use the formula. They'll say, okay, for this problem, use this formula. Sometimes,
that was my problem.
Not all the time. Not all the time.
Yeah.
But most of the times, like, I found good teachers. Like, I was going to school from 8 in the morning till 7 in the night, and right after my school, I was going to tuition from 7:30 to 9 o'clock in the night. So just because like I mean, whatever I do in the school, mostly it will just go out of my head. Like, I do understand, but then how much of effort I used to put, I was not getting the output. So I took the tuitions, and that's when the teacher was like, going through detail, like from the start to finish. Like, if you know nothing about this sort of subject, where you should start. For example, geometry, they'll start with like a line or like a point. My school taught that, but not in a very nice way. It was all about like getting the score, getting the rank, and
that was the United States is all about pass the test. That's it.
I mean, pass the test is good. That's exactly
pass the test.
I mean, if I look back now, did I use that thing anywhere else? No, it was useless. I mean, now I'm using it because I'm a 3D artist, but in engineering, you'll have the basics of math, but then you're gonna like forget it, and you have to revisit all the time the 11th and 12th stuff, because 11th and 12th is like the basic of all the engineering for us. Like, because I took maths, physics, and chemistry, so the physics is being divided to like individual branches in engineering. Like, mechanical only takes the mechanics and fluid dynamics or something, but you'll have only like one chapter of it. So for getting the entrance exam, what they'll ask us to do is like, literally like by heart all sorts of formulas. Like, it's really hard. The exam is hard, but then you won't have enough time to like do everything in the given 2 years. But then, so what they'll do is they'll try to find efficient ways so that you can remember everything and score the exam. That's all. And once you're done, you'll never use it anywhere else, and you'll forget it like within like 1 month without touching your books. So you're always on this grind of like remembering stuff, having this practice on how to crack the exam. So it's always focused on how to crack this particular exam. Then what did you learn? Like, what life skill did you learn by learning this sort of thing? Is it useful anywhere? They're not going to explain anything. It's really annoying, but then I'm happy that I don't really care about the grades. You know, I was always
There's like a
getting
real
about them. Yeah.
there's like a real fault with that way of teaching, because it's sort of similar in the UK that you learn to get the test, and there's a lot of, at least in like the schools that I went through, that you just kind of, I'm just, trigonometric identities at A-level maths. That's one that I could never do. They never told us why we needed them, but it
Yeah.
was just like stuff like, I don't know, sine over cos equals tan, and 20 others that I don't remember. But they
Yeah.
don't really teach you why, and they just say to remember it so that you can use it in an exam, so that you can write a proof for like a random thing that they've given you. And it's like, not only is it not interesting for you to learn at the time, but if you ever need it in the future, you're going to have to relearn it from scratch because you're not going to remember. So it's like doubly a waste of time.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
is.
My experience is lack of examples. You go through school, and I'm not going to say if I knew that at the time, I would have learnt it.
Yeah.
But for developing computer games or being a technical artist, so using mathematics to generate art, I mean, I loved art at school, and I didn't necessarily struggle with maths. I could do it, but I did it via rote. I learned the thing I needed to learn. I didn't learn first principles with derivation, so I ended up learning that if you take the exponent and multiply the number in front, that's how you get the derivative of that. And that's not actually learning how to do it. That's just learning the hack to do it.
Yeah.
So the lack of those examples, and I was a young boy. I played computer games, but coding and maths didn't really integrate with one another at all. To manipulate something in 3D space, what do you need? Vector mathematics. Exactly.
Yeah.
And matrices, it's a block of numbers to me.
Exactly.
It's still a bit fuzzy, but
yeah.
I mean,
and like we had to multiply matrices by hand, and that was the most annoying thing. And I was like, wow. Well, once the computers came along, it's cool to know how to do that, but you don't know how. You don't have to, but you have to know the concepts behind
concepts. Yeah.
and mapping and what transforms are. Like UV mapping seems alien to someone originally, but it's like, have you seen the example of the chocolate Christmas Santa when the foil's all unwrapped and it's like, that's what it looks like in 3D. This is the 2D example, and it's just like, boom, that's UV.
One thing that's interesting.
Great analogy.
So I say that I'm bad at maths and mental maths and stuff, but again, like one thing that was really interesting when doing the game development side of programming is because you think, okay, we need a lot of mathematics to do things like, things moving around and interacting, whatever. But actually, I think in my mind, when I was learning it, I was converting a lot of it into kind of instructional rules again, because like with Unity, for example, you do a lot of stuff by time.delta time, which is like the change in time, like rate as frames progress.
I remember that,
and stuff like that. So you could maybe you can multiply things by the transform of an object, like dot up, which is the like up direction of the vector and stuff like that. So maybe you can rotate things by multiplying them by time. And I'm like, okay, well, in my mind, I'm not doing any maths. I understand that this is the direction and this is time. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, make this move in response to time. So like as I'm writing it out. So I don't think about the maths side of it. You're looking at it from a more abstract perspective. You're just describing. It's like a law of physics. So I want you to fall with gravity, or something like that. So yeah, it's just a different take. It's just interesting thinking about the psychologies. But when I said I was going to mention the counting thing as well. So I had a weird conversation with one of my Australian friends a little while back. I don't know how this came up, but I mentioned, and I realized how weird it is. Whenever I count things, like in real life, I visualize like the face of a die, so like a dice. And like, but it's not exactly a proper dice because like there's a very specific order. I visualize the dots, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 down the middle, and it's the same every time. And even I noticed when I make notes, and I like, because there was one thing where I shifted like all the video clips in a video, so I needed to move all the following chapters back by like 7 seconds. So as I'm looking at the different times on my paper, you can see me like making dots on the page. Because as I'm like thinking, counting backwards, I'm dotting like in the order, and it's just this weird thing that I don't know where I picked that up or how it started, but it's just strange.
That's such a strange like mental model.
Interesting. I think that's some sort of another bot thing, like no humans do that. Come on,
baby, but but like it doesn't even have to be like strictly. You don't even have to imagine it visually. It's like you can just feel the position of it, because I implore you to try, because like if you imagine that 1 is up there and 2 is there, 3 and 4. If you like count 1, 2, 3, you can kind of feel like there's something there, if that makes sense. I don't really know how to kind of describe it. It's like just mentally.
That's kind of how some old numbers were written. There was like 1, and then 2 became 2 lines. So it's almost like a geometric representation of the fact that you're counting up.
Yeah.
In your case, it's positional by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing to describe
that's how
to people.
Common Core is building it up.
If you try it sometime, because like I don't always sit there and like think, okay, well here's the face of a die, but like if I'm just counting as I'm walking, I'm like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and like you're kind of feeling the directions as you do it. So like that feeling is almost stored in your short memory almost, which is a bit of a pretty bit weird.
So we've talked about some really high level, what can be really high level topics like counting, and so when it comes to
so complicated.
Yes, so complicated. I've run out of fingers. But
2 + 2
when it comes, things are gatekeeped. Lamp, squirrel. When it comes to like counting. Oh no, I throw myself off. When it comes to things like coding, mathematics, this is probably a personal feeling, and probably other people do feel it personally, even if it isn't true. That these subjects can be somewhat gatekept from people who don't understand it. So, I've had plenty of people say to me, "Oh, if you're not good at maths early on, you'll never be able to do it." But it turns out that perhaps you were taught in a way that didn't match your particular. I'm not going to say learning style, but something that you could understand. Perhaps there was a lack of a tangible example for you to get on. The classic one. I love what you were saying earlier, Curtis, about like the coding thing. A classic one that I talk about is a cup of tea. Because it's very British for a start, but also if you're making a cup of tea, you pour water until, and then you add milk. Things have to be in a certain order, and you do put the milk in after the hot water.
Don't want to be one of these.
Good.
One of these savages.
How you do that? How else would you do that?
But that's like a function called make tea, but then you could abstract it even further to make hot drinks, so you can take things out, and then your parameters to that function become, instead of tea bag and hot water and milk, it just and milk can be an optional one. Tea bag becomes hot chocolate or coffee, and suddenly breaking it down into an everyday task, people start to understand, perhaps coding isn't so complex, because it's, as you say, it's not always about maths. I've learned a little bit of maths through that, but I've definitely learned more maths through art.
Yeah. To be honest, that's true.
Me too. Like my brother's a comp sci major. He's been a developer for 20 years now, and I don't know how much math he actually uses. Like he'll remember it all. Like if I ask him questions, he remembers it, but I don't know how much he uses. He's been doing like social media stuff forever now, and iOS development. I mean, maybe he uses vector stuff, but it's all in libraries. He just calls in the libraries that are already
exactly.
written.
I mean, me and Erin use. I think Erin can relate to this. Like, we only have only few set of functions in Blender, right? But we build tools which does high level stuff with the only basic stuff. That's only because with time we knew where else these things would fit in. Right?
Yeah.
So, for example, matrix calculation, you can build your own matrix calculator, like matrix addition, matrix multiplication. You can build it in Blender because you know how matrices work. So you can just translate the same algorithm into nodes. And you might take some time, but then you can do that. It's all about the basics. It's like you only have few tools in Blender to do this, but even derivatives.
Also, like people always say, I get this comment a lot, like, what books can I read to learn the maths, or what course do I need to do to learn the maths to do this? And it's like, you don't really need to know the maths. You don't need to know what modulo does under the hood. You just need to know what it looks like, because the context that you're using it in is visual. So it's just a tool, it's just a different name for you've got your hard round brush, you've got your soft round brush, and you've got your modulo, and that just makes gradients for you. Like, it's not, I got into it by not thinking about it as maths. And I think this is like a real issue with our education system, is how segregated subjects are. Because maths is it's so hard to learn it unless you're doing it like in the context of engineering or in the context of art or something. And it's like, you should learn something in the context of a vocational use case.
Yeah, it's
I
more
agree.
like,
oh man. Absolutely.
I mean, when you talk about stuff, this is exactly why I think the only difference between me and Erin is he only talks about the functionality, because it's a tool. The function is just a tool. It's just going to output some stuff. So just know what it does, like what this function is doing. You don't need like how it works. But
Like
what I do is
it'll
I go through
empower
it.
you.
Yeah,
Like it'll make you better if you
know
can
it.
use it and you also know what it does. You'll be
Yeah,
able to use it in more ways, or you'll be able to use it more efficiently. But you
yeah.
don't
Yes.
like
Yeah.
you don't have to know those things or be put off from using it because you don't know those
Like
things.
for example, everyone uses the mapping node, but not many people know the math behind it. But once you know the math, you'll stop using the mapping node altogether, and you'll be only using vector math nodes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because like for a fact that this is exactly the same thing.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's all about like just know the tools. It's like everyone uses mapping node in Blender, and under the hood you don't care because you understand what it is doing. So
This
that's it.
I've got a great example of an under the hood from game development in a second, but I just recalled about 2 years ago. So sine wave goes up and down, and
Yeah.
then like just like you were saying there, Erin, when it comes to just learning what the things do. So if you multiply it, it's going to change the frequency of that sine
Yeah.
wave, and if you add something to it, it's going to offset the sine
Set it.
wave.
Yeah.
And so you just learn these two rules, and all of a sudden you're a genius. You can move things around,
Yeah.
and you can make them smaller and larger. And
And you can make it move in different axes by adding something to the different axes, like in game development as well. You can like make it jump if
yeah. So
you add that thing.
the game development example of knowing what's going under the hood has got to be quaternions. Everybody like they jump in and like, I got to learn how they work. It's like, what? I'm going to stick my neck out. I'm going to stick my neck out here and say, you really don't need to know how they work unless you're making a game engine. Then you do. Otherwise, just learn how to use them.
Or avoid gimbal lock. I don't know.
Gimbal lock, yeah, for sure.
gimbal,
or just avoid it in general.
I think in robotic programming, I think do they call it? I don't know. You probably know this, Charan. The singularity, which is essentially the gimbal lock. It does.
No, we call it
collapse.
gimbal lock itself. Yeah, that's what like we call it. Yeah,
Yeah,
Gimbal
that's what we called it when we were doing it, and it's just so funny when you watch it happen. It's just like whoa, going all weird and try to resolve itself.
It's so bizarre.
That's so funny.
But I wanted to kind of come back a bit as well about the geometry nodes, because we're talking about all these different ways of thinking about things and like methodologies of approaching stuff. But this is why fields, for me, is the right way to go for geometry nodes, because you'd think that the attribute system, me being the Python coder, would be like compatible, and it would be like, oh yeah, right up my alley. Not true. I couldn't read it. I couldn't understand it. And even just like simple demos, I was looking at it like, this is the same way I feel when I look at fractions and equations and stuff. Like, I know how nodes work. I know how they work. I know how to make stuff in Blender. This should be easy. Why is it not? There's like a, it's like trying to fit a circle into like a triangle shape. It's like, it's not doing anything for me. So, but the fields is different because it's abstract. It's much more abstract, just like the shader editor. So I'm like, okay, I don't have to be so explicit about things now. And suddenly it's more enjoyable.
You did a great example, I think it was a Twitter post you did, Erin, where you had cut down something from, I'm going to exaggerate, but 500 nodes to like 5.
Yeah,
and it was just that's why fields is useful.
Yeah, that's
also. So I've just ported my toolkit from attributes over to fields, and so many of the nodes, like some of them, I just like. For doing like line segments and things, it's fairly easy to do the math, so I could just do that. But then there was some like the phylotaxis, which is the distribution of like petals or spirographs and things like that. There was like a little bit more complex maths. And I was having to try and read the attribute version. And this is like coming back to what you were saying, Curtis, about the legibility. I made those nodes. I was very familiar with the attribute system. I could not read them. I had no idea what was going on. So it was just like, it just didn't work as a system. The abstraction helps so much in the new fields, and I think a lot of people are like frustrated that they have to learn a new system. And it's like you already know how to use shaders, so you just have to forget how to use attributes, and you'll be fine.
And I think that was a big thing too, because when I jumped in, I jumped into geometry nodes and I was like, oh, attributes, okay, cool. I know them from Houdini. I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But then I found myself writing attributes on top of attributes and adding new attributes, and I'd be like,
what the heck?
attribute 001 final, attribute 001 temporary, attribute 002 temporary, and I was like trying to keep track of it all was like crazy, and like the more complex it got, I'm like, oh no, this is the way Houdini has it written, flowing is more elegant. I'm like, this isn't gonna work. And then they went to fields. And I'm like, what are they doing? And then I watched your video. I'm like, oh.
I've seen a few people like asking for it to go back to attributes, and that's like some people I really respect because like it's very divided in the community. But I'm just like, please don't, because this one's actually compatible with my mind.
I mean, like
yeah.
I jumped into like the attribute system in the very beginning, like me and Erin. I said immediately, this is a very inefficient way of doing this. I know for a fact this is not gonna work, so I'm not gonna touch it. And yeah, it didn't happen because if you think about it, in a production environment, if you write the attribute, you have to like make sure like everyone knows that attribute, right?
Yes.
Like how hard is it gonna be like for everyone to like remember all attributes, whatever they make?
If you're trying to use fewer attributes because you want to save less data to the mesh and save on memory and save on processing, then you end up with this situation where, let's say you have like a string node which holds your attribute and you plug it in and it goes into the result, and then in the next one it takes that into the next node, even though it's already connected. The nodes should already be talking to each other, but they weren't. But then you're passing through this attribute every single time, and then at some point you might be thinking, actually I want to have a different functionality branch off, or I want to bring in a new attribute here. And it's like all of this, you have 200 nodes potentially which are all dependent on this one connection, and you want to change the name of that attribute. Whereas like now in fields, it's just like, let me just connect this noodle over here, and then you're done.
I mean, you have to duplicate it if you want.
That's a
like
core programming functionality, though, being able to change your variable, which is essentially what the attribute is. And you could quite easily do that. I've been doing a music course at the moment, and we start off with like a kick drum, bum, bum, bum. The moment you add the snare to it, you need to rename the audio track now to kick and snare or rhythm or something else, because it wouldn't make sense. And just the same with the attribute there. That must be a real nightmare. Or you just go, no, it'll be attribute 47. There we go. Leave it like
exactly.
See,
cowbell 001-2.
We need more cowbell. Ding.
The best part is, if you want to know the math, you can just go watch the procedural tutorials of shaders, and you'll know the math now. Like, right? You don't need to like repeat the same thing again, and you can do everything that you do with shaders in geometry nodes if you have high enough mesh. To be honest,
and that's the cool thing. So people who were like, wondering, how, because I think the attributes, when they were going in that direction, was very similar to Houdini in a lot of ways. But Antagma said it best. They said it in a comment on one of their videos. Somebody asked a question, and it's like the old way that geometry nodes first iteration was like SOPs in Houdini, surface operators. This way is like vector operators, is VOPs.
Yeah, this all VOPs. Yeah. To be honest, that's true.
In a way, it's cooler because you can go in VOPs, you can do some incredible stuff and then feed it back into SOPs in Houdini. Whereas, so doing that in Blender this way is I think it's more efficient, and B, like it makes more sense to a lot more people. Like so people who have been learning all of these tutorials on shaders and things, that all of us have been doing in our tutorials. You're right, Charan. You and Erin, you can take this into directly into geometry nodes and just tweak a few little things in your knowledge base, add a few little things in, and be able to start getting really cool results. I think it's cool. I mean,
one thing
I don't know where they're going with it, but
one thing me and Erin were talking about this was like, can we like copy shader nodes to geometry nodes, because it's the same nodes. If that's the case, then I can visualize everything in shader nodes and copy paste in geometry nodes.
Yeah, you can actually build. You can. Yeah, instead of displacements for your tiles, you can actually, call in, procedural geometry
tiles,
and make actual geometry. So yeah,
I mean,
it should work, right?
Technically,
I'm gonna have to split. So
all right,
thanks, guys.
All right,
I'll hang out next week though, because it's next week's like November launch.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then you'll be gone for then the month. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Right.
See you later.
All right, see ya.
All right. See you, Erin.
The like the field system for geometry nodes is why I started working on the new version of BiGen. Because I was playing with it, and then I got the scouring stuff going, and I was like, okay, well now it's simple enough to do with Python because like I don't have to worry about all the attribute stuff going on necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was so annoying.
yeah.
Do you guys see that the modifier stack may disappear in the future because of geometry nodes?
Yeah, could
I
be.
hope so.
Maybe.
There's no need for it now. There wouldn't be a need. I think that modifier stack is a crutch. It's like going back to 3D Studio Max mentality, whereas you're going into something procedural like Houdini, you're not going to need it. And I think tying all geometry nodes into that modifier stack is just kind of an extra step that they're not going to need going forward.
So long as they implement,
I'm not a developer. I don't know, but
yeah. So long as they do all the modifiers before they remove the stack. Like,
well, true.
Yeah,
yes, of course.
Then it'll be all right.
Oh my god!
They'll be like, oh, well, we're kind of doing the constraints later.
Gone.
Yeah,
It makes a lot of sense.
Modifier. Yeah, exactly.
And it should be like an add-on. Like if you want back, the modifier stack, you can basically do that. But it should.
Totally.
It should be more
the array
like
node and the bevel node, and you just put it in line.
yeah.
I mean,
But then you can use that
is-
data elsewhere. You can feed it around and do far more things than you could ever do with the modifier stack.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I
would
really
love it,
want is
yeah.
if I add a modifier, it should automatically add the node here. That's exactly how Houdini works.
Mhm.
Yes,
So,
it is.
you
And
can complete. For example, if you want to edit anything, it's going to add an edit node. Okay.
Sorry.
I was talking over people, so I'm preventing that.
Yeah, we're just having a laugh around now. But yeah, I agree.
Okay, fine.
But actually, on that point though, again talking about Bigen, because there's like three different, like I said in the announcement video for it, there's like three main categories for it, which is like the surface effects, the mesh effects, and the volume. The surface is easy to do; it's just putting things over the surface. That's fine to do with geometry nodes now. The mesh effects would
I did watch that video.
yeah, the mesh effects would require like all the modifiers being transferred to geometry nodes, because I rely on them so heavily, like the current modifiers. So I can't really do the system yet where I'm like mixing up the modifier stack with the geonodes. Well, I kind of can, but it'd be a bit weird. So it's a bit redundant. Should I do that now and then wait for them to put, like, I need to think about that. The mesh effects is the main hiccup there. The volume effects, I'm waiting for the distribute points in a volume node in geometry nodes, because that's going to be extremely useful for that. There are workarounds you can do. There are lots of weird workarounds I could do with like Python and stuff, but one of them Erin gave as an example is like scaling down the normals from the surface, so you can kind of imagine that things are inside the mesh. But even then, that's a bit of a hacky workaround. But from the perspective,
you can project in,
from like a development and time investments perspective, I was like, okay, well that's probably a good thing to do for now, because like I can work on content for the volumes and just like distribute them using the workaround feature now. And then when we finally get the node, just replace that system with the node, and you've already got the content there. So, yeah, things to think about.
Yeah, that having points in a volume would make a massive difference. But then Houdini, then Blender has to really, really, really start addressing the data handling functionalities, because you're going to generate so much geometry and so much stuff that if you can't handle that kind of data, it's going to crash. So like, because in Houdini you get the points from volume. There's a couple ways to build in points inside a volume. So you can do like an ISO offset, you can do a VDB convert, and you can do a scatter from that, or you can just do a points from volume that exists now, I think since like 16.5 or something, where you can just you can do points from volume, and it'll give you the internal volume and fill it with points. And then you can, they'll all be like congruent, and then you can just do a jitter and like mess it all up, and then you can do like so much cool stuff from there. There's so many ways to do it, and like, but it's so useful because you can, you can just do incredible, like if you're talking about like Bigen and the generative stuff that you do and that abstract kind of art. Having the ability to, you're so right, having the ability to fill a volume with points and then being able to instance things onto that, or even just like just move it around and pull the vector data or pull the velocity data out of that, and then once they get to everything nodes where your particle systems, when you can take that velocity data and apply it to like smoke sims. Internally,
exactly.
It's mind blowing what you can do, and having that functionality is key.
Yeah, exactly. And velocities, and for example, for abstract stuff, velocity can be useful to make trials. So, the directions, like, I mean,
Yep.
you can do that with normals as well, like,
Sure.
normal directions, but it's gonna like change so much stuff. Like, it's gonna add so much into the Blender community, something which is very new. So, I mean, I think Houdini excels in this stuff. Like, it has every single functionality, or else you can build one from scratch if you know the knowledge for sure with all the tools.
Yeah.
I've not used Houdini in depth yet, so I'm still trying to get grips with it, especially now the new version's out as well.
Wednesday is dropping Wednesday. Yeah,
I know, right? But
so good.
So I've always wanted Blender to be a bit sensible when it comes to protecting the end user. So they've done some things like you move the subdivision slider and it caps out at 6, but you can type in 600 if you want.
You could, yes,
and watch the world melt. It'd be really nice, especially with nodes as well, if they're transferring over into getting rid of that modifier stack and going over. It's like, are you really sure? Are you sure?
Yes.
Yeah, there should be some sort of self-protection, because I've done it. I've shared the clip, haven't I, with me typing in the wrong number of particles and then deleting, and I've got this mental image in my head of when I click a field to change it, it should be highlighted and ready to change, but no, you need to click again to type the number in. So I went from like 24 to like 24,000 and something. I was like, but that's it. That's your project lost whilst it either calculates out, which I wasn't going to wait for, or when was the last time I saved? I reloaded the project and the default cube came up. I was like,
yeah, it's so dangerous. Like you and Blender, the devs hopefully understand that most of their community are on lower end PCs, consumer PCs. This isn't like such a small amount of their people are on like extreme like Threadripper systems and things. So
yeah.
Protect the end user. That is the advice. Protect them. Don't let them. You can type in 500, but cap it out at 3. I brought my Threadripper to my knees in Houdini, like by accidentally connecting, a node to copy to points, and like I've actually reversed it, and I actually ended up like trying to instance my entire scene onto all the points that I made in the scene, and it just like creates this recursive loop, and my computer goes for like an hour, and it's spinning, and it's heating up, and I'm like, all right, shut down, hard shutdown.
Yeah.
Have you
Those
ever
mistakes happen? So
yeah, I love my particles and simulations, and if you put the wrong number in, it's just like bang, the whole project is gone at that point.
It's like
it's like divide by 0, done.
Yep.
See you later. Putting a subsurf modifier on a high poly mesh accidentally. I've done that so many times.
I haven't Blended.
And then it just freezes, and you're like, shit, because now you have to force close it because it's never gonna start again.
Exactly.
The best part about Houdini is like the viewport is super fast. Like once the calculation is done, it's amazingly fast. I have no idea what's going on there, but now Clarice came along, and Clarice is like so good with handling the data. I have no idea what's happening there.
Clarice is like, I mean, Bob said it himself. It's magic. It's like alien technology. It's not human. Like I don't know how these guys figured it out, but it's incredible. I have the PLE version of Clarice, and I've been playing around with it, and I'm just like, oh my god. And I'm so excited because I have a new render engine coming too called Angie, and it should be fast. And right now my Cycles X is super fast, but I'm doing biomedical work, and I need a ton of subsurface scattering. And even Syncretic had given me his subsurface shader, which is really good, and it comes in his like material library pack. But it was awesome, but I'm still not. I can't cut frames out that fast. I'm still getting noise, and I'm like, So hopefully either Karma, which is coming out on Wednesday, which they say CPU is production ready. Karma is Houdini's new render engine that they built.
That looked phenomenal in the demos. It looked amazing.
Yeah, it's faster than Mantra, and it's and they say they're ripping off. I love the way they say it. They're ripping off that beta tag. So Karma's going to be production ready for CPU use. Or Clarice, which is really fast too, and their new render engine Angie. Or hopefully, I would love it if the devs in Blender could like somehow take the subsurface scattering in Eevee, or somehow, I don't know. Maybe you guys know. Have they matched motion blur between Cycles and Eevee 1-to-1?
I don't think so.
I don't know about that. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And subsurface scattering in Eevee can be a bit weird because you need the light in front of the source rather than behind.
It's true.
to get the right subsurface effect.
Yeah, because I'm trying to just like break it out in a pass, because you can just add subsurface scattering and compositing.
Yeah,
You don't
that's
need
true.
to bake it in. Like you don't need to render it.
I mean,
You can have
people
it as a
do
separate
that
pass.
for volumetrics, right? Like cycles
Yeah.
volumetrics, people do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll try only creating the bounding box of all that, because all you need to do is like get the bounce lighting properly of the volumes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Volume bounces.
Yeah.
So most of the time, I think Bob is the one who showed me for the first time. He rendered out like an EV pass of volumetrics, which takes like literally seconds.
Yep.
And there is no noise in it, so he'll just go to the composite and just add it over. That's it.
Yeah, I've been doing that a lot for freelance. The stuff that I'm doing, I've just been using EV to cut out fast, mist passes.
And he only uses and he only uses white color for that, so that he can add any color to the fog in the post. So
yep, as long as it doesn't, as long as your render doesn't clip, you're good to go. So if you render out, and even like a 16-bit PNG file will have enough of that data to be able to not clip and pull. And you can
you don't need an
make sure you
EXR
set white
at that
to
point.
like 0.8.
Yeah, be wary of EXRs. So I was using an EXR recently for a HDRI in a game, and it was just simple low poly clouds, and I was like, oh sure, this isn't too bad, and I think I set it at 800 by 400 in terms. Sorry, 8,000 by 400 in terms of its resolution. I rendered it, and it was like 700 megs. I was like, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, exactly.
We knocked it down to a PNG, and because it's not actually being used as a light source, it's just an image.
Oh yeah,
we were just like, okay, 4 megs. That'll do.
Yep, 4 meg.
I mean, to be honest, like I think JPEGs would work perfectly fine, because like when you look at even what is it called, Polyhaven, I mean the HDRI Haven, they always offer a HDRI as well as a JPEG, while the JPEG is the one used for visibility.
You can use it for reflections too. It's fine.
Yeah, and then you just swap it in the nodes so that the lighting information is from one image texture, and the other one is from just the viewer one, which is pretty good. Like you need that by default. Like I have no, like you just need like click one button.
I think when it comes to like high dynamic range images, that most people don't even have the viewing capability of really seeing the difference in the lighting information that it has, because unless you've got in front of you a 10-bit or greater display, you won't see that. I mean, you can literally grab an HDRI, go to your exposure setting, and just keep on dragging it down, and you'll notice the sun is like this big glaring thing, and slowly, and you're like 2 stops, 3 stops down, and there's the sun. It's like, but on my 8-bit display, that all of that information wasn't there, so it really doesn't matter. Use a JPEG.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're in film, sure. Yeah, for most people, use the JPEG. It's like people who render out 8,000 samples, or have 8K textures on the box in the corner that's actually only 3 pixels wide. So you could have gotten away with a 64 by 64 image with that.
Yeah, it's just optimization. Ian Hubert's great at that, man. He's like the master.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, he's just. I watch this stuff and I'm like, dude, that's genius. It's just genius level. Like, it's so awesome.
Yeah, I joined his Patreon. I joined his Patreon. And I was like, what? How?
But
why?
Patreon is like a blessing, to be honest. Like he has the best Patreon content ever.
I mean, this is no disrespect. A lot of it is very hacky, but it works.
Yeah,
it's one of those things.
But he has Blender, like 70 tutorials in his Patreon, 70 or 80 tutorials.
I have to kick up mine, man. Yeah, I was going strong for a while, and I just,
The best part is like you can just watch him. Doesn't matter. It's like relaxing if you watch his videos as well. So it's pretty much fun.
Yeah,
it's like
you guys might be interested in a video that I'm dropping next week after like 10, 12 weeks. I don't know off.
Yeah, we're competing for. We're in competition now.
I'm not going to post. No, So I sat down and I started making some feedback for my editor, and actually it ended up as more feedback to me than my editor, because I said something like, and again this is for the music stuff, but it would apply to anything. I literally said, and we're going to put a beat on the first and second, and third beat of the bar. And he cut out the and, so it just said first, second, and third beat of the bar. So I'd never communicated to the other person that would be looking down at my video. And if they weren't musically minded, which your editor might not be, when I say first and third beat, and you can see it visibly on the screen, it's the first and third beat, but it's just like, oh no. And I watched it back, and it included it. It cut out the mistake, which was the cough and the but not
timing
actually the thing.
Timing is important, right?
Yeah, totally. And so that's just one example of many. So I'm gonna post that because it was really insightful, actually going through the process myself and reviewing the video that I had edited and gone, actually, I'd have made exactly the same mistake because I, as the creator, didn't give any signposts whatsoever that was a mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
Weird.
I will close this up in a minute because I've got to go have my shower.
Yeah, I just want to like tell Kevin, Michael about the course that I took.
Yeah,
Curtis, you know about that. So I bought the Rebel Way course. Yes, 2 days ago, Kev.
Which one?
The Rebel Way, the Intro to FX for
Rebel Way?
Houdini artists. Yeah, and it starts on November 5th. And I'll have homework, which is amazing. I never had homework for a long time.
Yeah.
So
I like the way that they do their stuff with the actual projects and feedback and everything. That's different from what even I do in terms of courses, because there's obviously a price entry. There's an entry point and price there. Yeah.
I mean, no Blender person would pay that much amount for a course, right? Like, no. I don't think so. Like, you need to as well. Like,
yeah, because it's not going to translate to a career, whereas Houdini right now will. So
yeah, and then
it will in the future, but yeah.
It costed me $593, and I think it's 100% valid investment. Because if I have to learn Houdini myself, it's gonna take a long time to go to at least like some
time and money.
You've
exchanged $500 so you could learn it in what's the course? Is it 6 weeks? Is it
it's 10 weeks course. Yeah,
10 weeks.
10 weeks course, and I have access to the first week now. So the next week will unlock only after 12th of November. Awesome. So I can't just like go through everything, whatever they say. I have to like wait every single week for it to unlock. So I have enough time. I have enough time to watch the videos, practice them, and do the homework of the week as well. So, and I know the work. That's the best part. I have no other work in November, but except I have November FML.
Oh no!
Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother with that.
Oh god! And I really want to participate this year, but I won't be frequent for sure.
Yeah,
materials.
Focus on the Houdini stuff. Houdini stuff,
because I really want to like have a career here, and I'm planning to become an FXTD. So after this course, I start applying for colleges in UK and Canada. So once I get into but I really want to get into Lost Boys Studios, and that's the only thing I'm aiming for. So I really want to get into Lost Boys. That's it. Lost Boys School of Visual Effects. Yeah. And they have this program which is perfect. And the people coming out of them, out of graduates, are working at ILM, Scanline VFX, all the tops, working for Marvel films. If I, even by any chance, if I get into ILM or anything related to Marvel, I'll be the best. I will be the happiest, not the best. I mean, I'll be the happiest person on this planet.
And then like a month later, you'll be like, this is just a job.
Just a job. But I
I'm
think,
working in an office with other people. It's a job. I could be an accountant. No, it's fun. I'm kidding. It's a good.
I know.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Getting paid to do 3D all day is. It's tiring, it's taxing, it's crazy, but at the end of the day, like, it still beats staring at spreadsheets all day long. It's awesome.
And also
I've been doing this for 20 years.
The money is good, and also the money is good for FXTDs. It is like higher than 3D modelers. It's higher than compositors. It's higher than After Effects compositors too. It's like 20% more than everything, which is like good. I'll have the money. It is something which I'm really interested in. I can use all my math knowledge in being an FXTD, right? So all my engineering career will come to some meaningful ending.
One thing you also get paid in is NDA compliant bragging rights as well.
NDA compliant is the key. NDA compliant.
What is it?
That one.
what does it mean?
Oh, well,
Like, I have no idea.
Non-disclosure agreement.
So
No,
yeah.
no, like what is that?
Oh, well,
I can't put that in my showreel.
oh yeah. I mean,
Nope.
you're not allowed to show
You can
anything.
ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not allowed to talk about anything. You're not allowed to show anything. Usually that ends,
Once
after the film's done. But there's still a lot that you're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
sometimes
yeah,
with
yeah.
game studios, of course, you get to show off your work as part of because they often do packs when it comes to game concept art and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
See-
you just ask the company you work for. That's
Yeah.
what you do. They'll tell you, okay, you guys can use this on your reel now or not.
yeah.
And you don't show anything proprietary that the company developed.
Yeah.
I mean,
you
I've
just show,
seen
"Hey,
like
I
a
worked
lot of
on this shot."
people. I've seen a lot of people who put their shots in the Marvel movies or like Star Wars, whatever. They have put that in the showreels. Are like, okay, everyone can do that because you did that. You can credit yourself, right? Because you need credits for whatever you did. I mean,
That's my
in the
entire
way-
career. I can't show anything I've ever done. So
Yeah.
there's like two
God.
shots, maybe 3 shots that I can show that I've ever worked on. It's like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something people sometimes forget about the NDAs is that
all
like
proprietary.
they don't just end. Like you're not allowed to show everything, after like the film's done or whatever, because that's popped up a
Yeah.
couple of times on things that I'm probably not
Yeah.
allowed to talk about. But like,
Yeah.
when people are making things for the film, proprietary is the key point there. Sometimes you're inventing things for that film, but those things aren't
Yeah.
attached to that film. So you can't talk about those things because those belong to like the unit, the group, the company, whatever you're doing it for.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are some
Also,
people that
like-
after the film's gone, they run off and like tell people, and you're like, you kind of just broke it. So,
Yeah,
You could be in a lot of trouble.
yes,
Yeah,
you
I can be in a lot
Yeah.
of trouble too. Yeah.
yeah.
I love
it's
that.
all just legal stuff.
Mm.
I love the 10-week thing. So one of the things that I perhaps hate as an instructor, as a teacher, is that someone will buy a course, whether it's 10 hours long or 50 hours long, it doesn't matter, but they go through it at double speed and they produce, a donut at the end of it. Is a classic example. But have they learned anything? Have they applied anything through that? So I think the gating of content when it comes to like week 1, we're going to be doing this, and you're not going to get access. You can't kind of sneak ahead and do something that really helps you solidify your knowledge. I try and encourage it as much as possible in any courses that I'm doing, but I don't gate it because I know that's going to people are at different sort of knowledge levels. So if they come in and they oh yeah, I know this bit, thanks for the refresher, I want to move on, I've got to wait till next week. They'll just drop out at that point. They'll just say, screw it, I'll have a refund, which is even worse.
The winners make it to the end.
Yeah.
They're the ones that get the jobs.